The story of Rome begins not with historical facts but with a powerful myth. This myth tells of twin brothers Romulus and Remus. They were said to be the sons of Mars, the god of war. Their mother was Rhea Silvia, a Vestal virgin. The local king, Amulius, feared the twins and ordered them to be drowned in the Tiber River. However, the servant tasked with this grim duty took pity on the infants. Instead, he placed them in a basket and set it adrift on the Tiber River. The basket eventually ran aground at the foot of the Palatine Hill. There, a she-wolf discovered the crying babies and suckled them. Later, a shepherd named Faustulus found the twins. He and his wife, Acca Laurentia, raised the boys as their own. As young men, Romulus and Remus learned of their true identities. They returned to Alba Longa, overthrew King Amulius, and restored their grandfather Numitor to the throne. Afterwards, they decided to found their own city. They chose the area where the she-wolf had saved them, but they argued about which hill to build upon. Romulus favored the Palatine Hill, while Remus chose the Aventine Hill. To settle the dispute, they looked for a sign from the gods through augury. Romulus killed Remus, and Rome was thus founded in blood around 753 BCE. The early days of Rome were ruled by kings. 7 kings, starting with Romulus himself, are traditionally said to have reigned. The 7th and final king was Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, or Tarquin the Proud. His reign was described as tyrannical. The catalyst for his overthrow was the rape of Lucretia, a noblewoman, by Tarquin's son. Lucius Junius Brutus led the uprising. He rallied the Roman people to expel Tarquin and his family from Rome in 509 BCE. The Romans vowed never again to be ruled by a king. Instead, they established a new form of government called A. 2 consuls were elected annually, holding executive power and commanding the army. The Senate, an advisory council of elder statesmen, wielded enormous influence. There were also various popular assemblies where Roman citizens could vote on laws and elect officials. Society was sharply divided between the patricians and the plebeians. Initially, patricians held almost all political and religious offices. This led to the struggle of the orders, where plebeians fought for greater rights and representation. Over time, they achieved significant victories, including the creation of the office of tribune and the codification of Roman law in the 12 Tables around 450 BCE. These laws were displayed publicly, ensuring everyone knew their rights and obligations. Once the Republic was established, Rome began to look outwards. Its initial focus was on its immediate neighbors in Italy. The Romans were a martial people. Military service was a duty and a path to honor and advancement. For centuries, Rome was almost constantly at war. It fought against other Latin tribes, Etruscan cities, and Samnite hill peoples. Rome did not always win easily. There were significant setbacks, like the sack of Rome by the Gauls in 390 BCE. But the Romans were resilient. They learned from their defeats and adapted their military tactics. The Roman legion became one of the most effective fighting forces in the ancient world. Roman soldiers, or legionaries, were typically citizen farmers. They were known for their endurance and engineering skills. Rome also had a clever way of treating conquered peoples. Some were granted full Roman citizenship, others became allies, required to provide troops for Rome's armies. This policy helped Rome to consolidate its control over Italy and to increase its manpower for future wars. The most significant series of conflicts for the Roman Republic were the Punic Wars. These were 3 massive wars fought against Carthage, a powerful maritime empire based in modern-day Tunisia. The vast expansion of Rome brought enormous wealth and power. However, it also created deep internal problems for the Republic. Wealth from conquests flowed into the hands of a few powerful nobles. Small farmers lost their land and flocked to the city of Rome. Ambitious generals commanding loyal armies far from senatorial control began to dominate politics. The late Republic was an era of increasing political violence and civil wars. One of the most pivotal figures in this transformation was Gaius Julius Caesar. Caesar was a brilliant general and a charismatic politician. He rose through the political ranks, forming an alliance known as the First Triumvirate with Pompey and Crassus. Caesar then conquered Gaul in a series of masterful campaigns. His growing power alarmed many in the Senate. In 49 BCE, Julius Caesar made a fateful decision. He led his army across the Rubicon River, effectively declaring war on the Senate. A new civil war erupted. Caesar defeated Pompey and his other rivals. By 45 BCE, Caesar was the undisputed master of Rome. He was made dictator for life but was assassinated in 44 BCE. Caesar's death plunged Rome into another round of bloody civil wars. The rise of Augustus ushered in a long period of relative peace and stability known as the Pax Romana. This era lasted for about 200 years, from 27 BCE to 180 CE. Augustus maintained the outward forms of the Republic but held the real power. He controlled the army, the finances, and the appointment of officials. He reformed the administration of the provinces, making it more efficient and less corrupt. He also initiated a vast building program in Rome. During the Pax Romana, the Roman Empire reached its greatest territorial extent. Trade flourished across this vast area. Roman roads connected distant provinces. A common currency and Roman law facilitated commerce. Cities grew and prospered. Roman culture spread throughout the empire, a process known as Romanization. Many emperors after Augustus, like Trajan and Hadrian, were capable administrators and builders. Trajan expanded the empire to its largest size. Hadrian focused on consolidating the frontiers, building Hadrian's Wall in Britain. Despite occasional bad rulers, the institutions of the empire were strong enough to withstand these challenges. The Romans were not just conquerors and administrators, they were also great builders, engineers, and thinkers. One of their most significant legacies is the Latin language. Latin spread throughout the western part of the empire. Over centuries, local forms of Latin evolved into the Romance languages we know today. Roman law is another cornerstone of their legacy. The Romans developed a sophisticated legal system. It emphasized principles like justice, fairness, and the rights of citizens. The codification of Roman law became the basis for many modern legal systems. The Romans were master builders and engineers. They developed concrete, a revolutionary building material. Their achievements in architecture and infrastructure were astonishing. Life in the Roman Empire was a study in contrasts. For the wealthy elite, it could be a life of luxury, education, and political influence. However, for the vast majority of the population, life was much harder. Most people were poor farmers, laborers, or artisans. They lived in cramped and often unsanitary conditions. The gap between the rich and the poor was enormous. To keep the restless urban population of Rome content, the emperors provided panem et circenses, bread and circuses. This meant free or subsidized grain distributions and spectacular public entertainments. The most famous of these were the gladiatorial games. Slavery was a fundamental institution in the Roman world. A significant portion of the population was enslaved. The Roman economy depended heavily on slave labor. The Roman Empire at its height seemed invincible. However, by the 3rd century CE, serious problems began to emerge. This period is often called the crisis of the 3rd century. It was a time of intense political instability. Emperors were frequently assassinated or overthrown by rival generals. Between 235 and 284 CE, there were more than 20 emperors, most of whom died violently. This constant civil war weakened the frontiers and disrupted trade and agriculture. The sheer size of the empire also made it difficult to govern effectively. Internal economic troubles also plagued the empire. Constant warfare was expensive. Emperors often debased the currency, leading to rampant inflation. Taxation became heavier and more oppressive. While Rome struggled internally, external pressures on its long frontiers increased. Various groups of barbarian peoples began to press against the Roman borders. Several emperors made determined efforts to save the empire. Emperor Diocletian implemented sweeping reforms, establishing the tetrarchy to govern different parts of the empire. Despite the reforms of Diocletian and Constantine, the western part of the Roman Empire continued to decline. The division of the empire into western and eastern halves became more permanent over time. The Western Roman Empire faced mounting internal problems and relentless pressure from Germanic invasions. In 410 CE, the Visigoths sacked the city of Rome. The traditional date for the fall of the Western Roman Empire is 476 CE. In that year, the last Roman emperor in the West was deposed by the Germanic general Odoacer. While the Western Roman Empire crumbled, the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, endured. The legacy of Rome is immense and multifaceted. It continues to shape our world in countless ways.